Hi guys, my name is Gabe for those of you who haven't heard one of my speeches before, and today I'm going to be giving an informative speech for my speech class. I will be discussing the history of organ transplants and analyzing key procedures that got these transplants to what they are today, specifically the objectives, methods, and results. And these were dating from the 18th century to present day. So according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 22 people currently die each day waiting on the transplant list, and 120,000 Americans, being men, women, and children, are waiting on that list currently. I feel this information is important to know because we all wear the badge of being a donor or not on our IDs. It is also important to spread this information around, and what better than to have an audience of high school students, college students, and teachers. By becoming a donor, you are saving up to 8 lives and improving up to 70 more. In fact, some websites say you're saving up to 100, or improving up to 100 more lives. Sorry. So here's a fun fact. If you're ever feeling low self-worth, just remember that each one of your kidneys are worth $262,000. And you might be wondering, how am I credible to give you this information? Well, I have taken human anatomy course with Mrs. Lou Didier here at the high school, and I'm also pursuing a career in advanced healthcare, being nursing, a physician's assistant, or a nurse practitioner. So to start, I will discuss the objectives, methods, and results of the first successful kidney transplant. In 1954, Joseph E. Murray and colleagues at Peterbilt Brigham Hospital performed the first kidney transplant from one twin to another. The objective was to keep minimal immune system reactions. The method was to trick the body into accepting the foreign kidney as its own. A more effective immunosuppressant, cyclosporine, has been discovered since then in 1986, which is more current. But before that, the doctor's only way to suppress the immune system was to knock it down completely, which left them susceptible to sickness. So in result, because the patients were so identical, being twins, there were no rejection issues. But there were ethical problems, that stopped doctors, because to harm a healthy patient, they would have to lose an organ and helping the hurt one. The second key procedure I will discuss is the first successful heart transplant. Wanshansky, a South African grocer dying from chronic heart disease, received his heart transplant from Denise Darville, a 25-year-old woman who was injured in a fatal car accident. The objective was for surgeon Christina Bernard to employ the technique used initially in the 1950s by researchers. The only success before this was on dogs for heart transplants, so that's important to know. The methods were different drugs to suppress the immune system. The patient was susceptible to sickness, and the doctor knew that, but since he had limited options, they went ahead and proceeded. The result, however tragic, was 18 days later, Wanshansky died due to pneumonia. If you don't know what pneumonia is, that is infection of the air sacs in your lungs, which have a lot of problems by themselves. Dr. Bernard, though, could aim to further her research towards anti-rejection drugs. The final procedure is the lung transplant, the first lung transplant, actually. So Vladimir Petrovich performed the first lung transplant in animals in the 1940s. But Dr. James Hardy, who attended the University of Mississippi, performed the first human lung transplant in 1967, which is what I'm going to talk about. The objective was to find a patient in critical enough care, and that was a 58-year-old man who had lung cancer in the left airway and reoccurring pneumonia. The method, the donor and receiver were taken to the operating room. Both operations were actually remarkably uncomplicated, and the patient began breathing spontaneously. After the operation, chest x-rays and an angiogram confirmed that the lungs were fully ventilated and perfused, so they were working fine. But another bad result was it was initially a success, but he died months later from, I believe it was still pneumonia problems. However, it encouraged the field by demonstrating that rejection could be averted for at least a short time. So in conclusion to my speech, the first kidney, heart, and lung transplant are remarkable despite their failures, and currently these procedures are not nearly failures like that. They're mostly successes. In fact, over 30,970 were successfully performed in 2015. So my call to action to my audience is to consider becoming a donor yourself if you aren't one, because that's making yourself bigger